Welcome to Brave Inflexions. My name is Claudel van Eck, and today I have once again, welcome back, Freeman Nomvalo. Freeman is currently the CEO of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in South Africa. Previously, he'd been a CEO of the State Information Technology Agency. I always have to think very about that one. And he's also been he was the Accountant General of South Africa for many years. And Freeman, I think when I met you, you were the Accountant General at the time, right? And that's like way, way, way back.
Yes, I was. In fact, it could have even been just before I became Accountant General. We go a long way.
We go a long way. Freeman is really one of there's most lucid minds around leadership that I know. We've had plenty of conversations over the years around leadership, and I've also had the privilege of sharing a stage with him a couple of times, and always enjoy his talks, and I enjoy his deep thinking, and also Freeman, your ability to bring out those elements in the conversation that people tend to shy away from when it comes to leadership, because often we like to talk about things on the surface. And so, as I said in the previous video, his most important aspect of his CV is that he's a very good friend of mine. And as we're talking, you'll see why. I respect his brain as much as I do. In the last video, we talked about mobilizing yourself as a leader. Today, we're going to talk about deploying yourself as a leader. So I do encourage you to go and watch that video. As a matter of fact, I think you must watch that one first before you watch this one. Wouldn't you say, Freeman? Because it sets the platform. So as a leader, you start with yourself. You know, it's like when you fly, they tell you to put the oxygen on your own, the mask on your own face before you start helping others. So go and listen to that video and then circle back to this video. Freeman, now, so we talked about mobilizing yourself. We talked about understanding yourself and to get to yourself to a point where you're in the eye of the storm so that you can calmly look at things and not just react wildly to life wires when people press on the life wires, or people keeping you so busy that you're not able to think straight and see where we're going. Right, so now we're there. But we're still in the middle of this crisis. So how do leaders deploy themselves in the midst of a crisis?
First and foremost, like we alluded to in the previous video, there may be times when you're going to move away from certain practices and do things that some people that really like you wouldn't want you to do. So it becomes a difficult endeavor. And because it becomes such a difficult endeavor, there is no need for you to trouble yourself with leading, unless, of course, there is an important purpose for which you're doing it. And often that purpose isn't a purpose about yourself. It's about helping society, helping your community, helping your organization to face its reality and make progress on the issues that it's facing. Under COVID-19, ensure that you continue to operate and operate successfully, caring for your employees, but also at the same time ensuring that you survive for the future. So you need to make sure that there is an important orienting purpose that you're doing it for. But also accept the reality that as you begin to deploy yourself and do the things that you need to do, you need to understand that there will be some damage along the way. There will be some sacrifice you expect people to make. So you need to be conscious of that and actually name it up front. What is it? What am I expecting? What am I asking my people to let go of? What am I asking them to give into this endeavor? And that is important because you are going to be able to anticipate some of the things that they might do or the reactions they might have, because you are very, very clear that you are asking them to give in a portion of their blood for the greater good. Secondly, when you begin to challenge people like that, when you begin to do some of those things, some of the things, like I said, could be things that your cultural upbringing, your environment that you were in, are things that are frowned upon. Okay? And therefore, well, as you do some of those things, people are going to think, has he lost his marbles now? I don't know him to be like this. So there is some reputational damage that you might end up incurring as a result of trying to mobilize change. So you need to understand what that is and how is it likely to do to how you see yourself. And then, of course,
sorry, just to interrupt you, Freeman, just to because I'm trying to make sure that I stay on course with you. So what I heard you say is that you need to almost have the ability to step into the shoes of others, and to at the very least get some sense of how people will react to what it is that you're trying to do, and think very consciously about it so that you can put measures in place to either calm them down or help them to understand, but at the same time understand that there will be collateral damage, and that is difficult, isn't it? So now you've got to deal with the fact that you are the inflictor of pain.
Yes, you've got to be comfortable with that reality. And by inflicting pain, we're not just talking about people have to be fired only, but sometimes you get into an environment and find that there is Freeman, and Freeman is the go-to person. Now you come with this program that you are introducing, and all of a sudden people are asking questions of Claudel, not of Freeman.
Yeah.
You inflict pain in Freeman. Your intention is not to inflict pain on Freeman, is to drive the progress that is necessary. Mm-hmm. But invariably, it does do that. But also you may be asking people to sacrifice more than others for the greater good. I mean, under COVID-19, when the lockdown started, a number of conversations started to surface about, but the poorest of the poor will be the ones that are most affected. And some people say, no, this is an equalizer, we're all in the same boat. No, we're not in the same boat. We're in the same ocean, but there are people with boats that have got air conditioners.
Yeah.
With boats that have got a number of rooms. Yet you're asking everybody to make the same sacrifice. Those that can actually make that sacrifice because they've got the means to do so, and those that do not have the means to do so. And yet, for the greater good of everybody, you are asking, so you need to be conscious about all of those demands you're putting on people, because it is those demands that are going to result in the resistance. That's why the taxi industry is now trying to say, wait a minute, we're gonna put four people. Again, we can understand this from the basic point of view that, listen, they've got loans to the bank and so on that they are worried about, but there's also human life.
Mm. So one they need to, what I'm hearing you saying is that one needs to be very careful that you don't objectify people, but that you're able to understand that people are all in different realities.
Yes.
Even though the overall reality may be the same, but within that context, your ability to see through everybody's eyes, that is a skill, isn't it?
Well, indeed. And you can learn the skill. The beauty is you can learn the skill, and then you can begin to try and practice that skill when there are smaller things that are not as grave as what we just talked about. And part of this thing, Claudel, is about then when you're then going to think about what do I do to soften the pain, because the pain is inevitable. So you may begin to think about the ways in which you can soften the pain, and thereby increasing the ways in which the chances of success.
Yeah, and it makes me think about a study that I read about quite a while ago. Is You know, it's not just about you understanding other people's circumstances, but in you communicating the need for the change. You need to make sure that you speak the different languages as well. Because the way you're going to talk to Cladel, to get Cladel to understand the need for the change, may be different to how you're going to talk to Freeman, because Freeman is going to hear different words that mean different things for him when he hears those words.
You know what's interesting with that I've just said is that you find people who value consistency. They have defined themselves, they've defined who they are, and their very identity is so intertwined with the things they do. And as such, those people find it difficult then to go to somebody and tell one story and go to the next person and tell a different story. Whereas circumstances require that in order to mobilize this person, this is the story that the person needs to hear. This is the text I'm reading from. But if I'm going to talk to the next person, I read from a different text.
But there's also there's also the other side of it as a leader, that you can very easily fall into the trap of thinking that everybody sees what you see. So
indeed,
only taking it from your perspective and assuming that people will understand just because you think you understand.
Indeed. And there's something we call, that are common traps when you are so passionate about doing something and making change. And some of them are, you know, sometimes you so want to get to the end point because everybody's going to be clapping and saying, hooray, we've gotten to the end point. But in the process, because you're inflicting pain upon people, you don't even hear their cries. Because you're not hearing their cries, you can't then make those mid-course corrections, adjustments that are necessary for you to succeed. You can't lessen the pain. But also sometimes you get so married to your idea that you die with it. You become a martyr.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And or you become self-righteous. Every opportunity you find, the only conversation that is going to happen is about your idea. And some people, you know, they bang their chests for achieving some of these things. When something is going wrong, they are the people that are going to do it. And again, you remember we talked about the triggers and the buttons, those things about yourself that happen without you ever thinking. And it is now, they lead into these common traps. So your consciousness about these things will enable you, as you deal with this thing, to take a step back, listen, take a bit of a dipstick to understand what is the temperature in the environment, and then be able to make the adjustments that are necessary. And all of this in the service of a higher purpose.
So let me ask you this now. Before I ask you this question, just so I want to tie something what you said earlier on, the inflicting the pain in the process, and you may not even be recognizing it, is you may still pull off and successfully pull off the change, but if you don't recognize the pain you're inflicting now, and at the very least try to bring in countermeasures to deal with it, those are seeds that you're planting now that will come back later to bite you. You know, so people, whilst you're in the crisis, and people may just be going along, but the resentment may linger and then come back later to bite you. And then to come to the question I wanted to ask you is, you know, so the idea of, we talk about being married to your idea, and you can either become a martyr or you can become self-righteous. How does one find the balance between being flexible and changing feet when you need to, when you've read the temperature in the room, and when that idea is actually the right idea? You know, so in some cases you may be you may need to change tact. And in other cases, you may be dealing with a situation where that idea is the idea that must be implemented. And a different version of it is not going to give you the outcome that is necessary.
You know, the best word around it, I'm not going to be a Trump and say experience, it's humility. You know, humility enables you first to have that distance that you can keep between yourself in the arena and yourself, the observer. And that gives you a better sense of understanding the lay of the land. And if you can then get that, you can also be able to identify where the opportunities are to make the bigger impact that you need to make. But you need to be able to remove yourself from the action now and again in order to be able to gauge that and understand the impact and the pain you're inflicting into the system.
I get you. But I interrupted you.
So I said then that would be connected to a higher purpose. Now, how do you keep the purpose? How do you keep yourself purpose focused? You know, many years ago, I went to some spa and then they had some shrimp type work on us. And then they asked me what I was aspiring to do when in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And they asked me to write down. And we wrote it several times until it made sense and it was an inspiring and energizing statement. So sometimes you just need to write down what that purpose is somewhere and keep a physical reminder. And that physical reminder could be anything. It could be something that you've written down. It could be a gift that you got. It could be a book. It could be some song. Or you could even be thinking about a moment in time that triggered the thought that you have. But have that physical reminder that you can put somewhere that will constantly tell you that there is a purpose that you are about. And some people try to have rituals just to keep themselves focused on a certain mission that they want to accomplish. Every time we meet, we're going to do A, B, C, D. And they do that religiously. And some of those things are things that you can physically do to make sure that you stay connected to the purpose. So as you do all of these things and inflicting pain and so on, there's that constant reminder that you're not being sadistic. You are actually doing this for a bigger purpose. And that purpose is not about yourself. And that's important to emphasize.
Yeah, and I think that is central to leadership, is that understanding that there is, you're in service of a greater purpose. And that's not always that easy to achieve, because I think the value system that we have prevailing in the world today is you see more and more self-interest. And when people, even when they have those moments that you're talking about, that they don't even recognize that their decisions are based on self-interest, that it's driven by self-interest. So would it help if one also has somebody that you are accountable to, the kind of person who is not going to be afraid to tell you that decision that you've made now, I'm battling to see the greater good in that. I'm battling to see that it is not your self-interest talking here.
Yeah, indeed. And where you're inflicting pain, you do need to have that consciousness as well to ask yourself, do the means justify the end?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can actually become just brutal for no real reason, or actually take it to another extreme. So it's important that as you challenge people, as you ask them to sacrifice and so on, you maintain that level of balance in terms of what you're hoping to achieve and what you are asking to be put in the present moment.
So, and if you've been sent in as the hatchet man,
Yes. 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 And of course, part of your success then depends on how you then get into the arena.
Yes.
So you can just quickly reflect on you now there, you getting into the arena. You've thought about all of these things, the pain you're inflicting on other people and all of those things. As you get into the arena, you need to understand that whatever made you successful in the past may not be the same recipe that will make you successful now.
Yeah.
So you need to have certain conversations. You need to engage the people who are going to disappoint and engage and say, listen here, this is what we're trying to achieve. And these are the sacrifices I'm asking you to do. Have those frank and open conversations. And this is what it means for you.
Mm.
But then, because you've thought about those consequences, you can then begin to say, this is what I think we can do to make sure that you're not that worse off.
Yeah. But you land on your feet.
Yes, yes. So you need to begin to do that. And in some instances, as you then begin to engage with these things, you find that actually I'm not cut out for this. This isn't me. This is not how I have been. And then you need to then find ways in which you learn new ways of doing things, learn new skills. Because now you know that this is not my strong point. So what that tells you, this is my area of incompetence. How do I lean into that incompetence? How do I deal with it and make sure that it makes success? I'm successful. How do I tell the story of what is happening? You know, if somebody asks you a question, what did you do? If you give facts and no context, you find yourself actually frustrated because the facts are depressing.
Yeah.
But the minute you've got the context, the fact may be depressing, but there may be hope because the context provides a coherent story around the facts. So that's some of the things you can think about doing in engaging with the different stakeholders to find this progress. And of course, when there's a tough decision to be made, you should accept that you will make the tough decision. You might not succeed. You might not succeed first. Okay, go on.
So I just wanted to say that there's sometimes also the element of you're the one who delivers the message, telling the people that they're going to be there's going to be some pain, that some sacrifice is needed. But sometimes you need to deliver that message to people who are already on the back foot with you simply because of what they see in front of them. So, for example, if it's a woman and having to have that conversation with a guy who may have gender issues. So I'm trying to be polite, so the resistance is already there, you know. So she's not doing this because it's the right thing to do. She's doing this because I'm a man.
Exactly. So now, how do you then engage with the audience? What's important in this instance, because you might be facing those circumstances, but also that could be your prejudice yourself. Because your past, you've had so many interactions that proved to be that way, and it could well be. So you should stay with your audience. You should be present. Your presence in that space should not just be physical, but should be total. Because then you can then listen curiously as people speak. They might say things that make you uncomfortable. This is misogynistic. But then if you're listening curiously, you might actually, not pardoning the statement, but you might say, this guy's upbringing is bad. But you're not judging the person, but you're saying there's a context.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not asking people to condone bad behavior. But I'm just saying that sometimes we learn these things and we regurgitate them. But fundamentally, have you met somebody that you thought, this guy is actually very good at heart, but constantly is hurting people?
Yes. When you can see the self-awareness is not there, they're not conscious of how they're coming across.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's something in them that is very, very ingrained about their identity, about what it means to be a man, about what it means to be this and that. And that determines the things that they do and so on. So you need to do that. And you need to allow for silence, where you actually just suspend all judgment, sit quietly and listen. And of course, if you are the person in authority, it's easy for people to listen to you because you're the boss.
Yes.
And therefore, you might think that people are following you, whereas in fact, they're just respecting your position.
Yeah.
So it's important then, as you engage with the people, to have a better understanding, a better feel of those things. And then when you then have to speak from the heart. Be authentic. Mind the tone of your voice. Use silence for the message to soak in. Make each word count. And be deliberate about that, because you draw the audience into the message you're trying to deliver. You're delivering not so good news, and therefore you first need to be able to remember 2 ears and 1 mouth. You use them in that proportion. And at the same time, when you then have to use the mouth, you use it wisely.
Yeah, absolutely. But you need to do that calmly and reflect, right?
Indeed. So yeah, that's the story. And of course, because the terrain that you are operating in at that point, Claudel, you might want to think about, wait a minute, what if I do this thing and then I fail? And then you then start with your experimentation process and say, okay, can I try small bits and pieces of this? Because the things you're talking about are necessary if there is a bigger mission you're trying to achieve. You have got absolutely no reason to start worrying about, no, these people are racist, no, these people are misogynistic. And yes, that is a reality you are dealing with. But your success on the mission you are driving might depend on you mobilizing those very same people. So the question is, how will you then do those things, and how do you bring them slowly into the equation? Of course, if you are in authority, in the event that what they are doing is completely out of line, you can still discipline them. I'm not ruling that out of the way. I'm talking about an astute leader who's trying to maximize success in the things that he or she is doing, understanding the complexity of the environment, understanding the prejudices that people bring, because he or she is bringing his or her own prejudices as well into the equation.
So when you say experimenting, can you just expand a little more in terms of what do you mean by that?
If you're dealing with people that believe in certain things, I'm just trying to use that example. People that believe for life to be meaningful, it has to be that way. But what is needed often in the environment is something very, very different. You can't ask them to do that when you are dealing with things that are very close to their hearts. You need to start with things that they don't really care that much about, but they believe in those things. So start with those smaller steps and get them to get comfortable with the fact that actually this becomes one of the realities. If I'm unable to discipline somebody older than me, I might just start with small things where it's really something that is insignificant and take a different view to the person. And keep doing that until I get to a point where it just comes naturally. Remember, I'm the one who's feeling uncomfortable, disagreeing. So I'm the one who's supposed to start learning to disagree with somebody older. So when I'm talking about experimenting, I'm talking about doing those things that you feel uncomfortable about, but do them where in a space where it's safer to do so, because the stakes are not very high.
And so you become more used to it. So it's essentially what you're saying is practice in little steps until you can take the big steps, until you can run.
everything we do today as second nature. Everything we do as second nature. We took first steps, we failed, and failed, and failed until we were able to succeed.
That's right. Absolutely. Freeman, so we've talked about in the previous video, we talked about mobilizing yourself. In this video, we're talking about deploying yourself as a leader. And very importantly, I think the most salient points that you made is around becoming comfortable with the fact that you are going to make unpopular decisions. You are going to make decisions where people are going to get hurt in the process. But to be very mindful of where people are at, being able to look through different lenses and understand where people are at, and then almost, I suppose, cushion where you can cushion. I mean, you can't cushion everything, but where it is possible to do so, that you don't plant seeds of resentment now that will come out later. You know, so if you're the hatchet man, for example, one of the things that I've always felt very strongly about when one is in a leadership position, that you don't just think about you leading now. You've got to almost see yourself as part of a continuum of leaders. And so you don't want the third leader after you or the second leader after you to look back and curse you for the bad decisions that you've made. You know, so if you've created a toxic environment in your organization, or you created resentment, you may not live in the consequences thereof, especially when you're there for a short period of time. The next person comes in, that person then has to come and clean up your mess, and makes it so much more difficult and take the organization backward instead of taking it forward.
You know, even worse, Claudel, because of the very nature of these activities, you might find yourself still having to deal with the mess. You thought yours was a fleeting passing moment, and all of a sudden people say, look, we like what you're doing, you're being effective here, please continue. And all of a sudden, all of those things, so what you do today will come back tomorrow. It might haunt somebody else, but boy, it could be you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you've got to think very responsibly about it, whether you're going to live in the consequences of your decisions or whether somebody else is going to live in the consequences of your decision. As a leader in that context, you are responsible for the organization and the people and how things move forward. So you need to make sure that you don't cause harm in the process. Sure, some really deep thoughts there.
You don't cause harm that is purposeless. Remember, you may end up causing harm without being intentional about doing that. But the point is, one author wrote a chapter in his book, Live and Let Live and Leave a Legacy. That's an important thing to think about. When you are gone, what will the story say? So write your own obituary.
No, absolutely. But it is about being very conscious about it. And I think often people find themselves in senior leadership positions, and they're running so fast, and especially because we're now having this conversation in the context of a crisis. You know, to consciously think about all these things can be very difficult, and you may miss very important implications of your actions within the organization. So being deliberate about it does mean that you've got to force yourself out of the situation and think, take the helicopter view and think about things clearly. I think in the previous video I made I used the analogy of getting to the eye of the storm, you know, so that you can think clearly about things. So Once again, if you've missed the first video, please go and have a look at that. There Freeman talks to us about mobilizing yourself so that you can get yourself in the eye of the storm. And in this video, we talked about deploying yourself as a leader. Thank you once again, Freeman, for making the time and spending some time with me. Very insightful. And as usual, and as I expected it to be, deep thoughts. It's the kind of things that make us uncomfortable to talk about as leaders, because it confronts us very personally as leaders. Thank you to the audience. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for visiting Brave Inflexions. I encourage you to go to the rest of the website. There's lots of information on the website. I very purposefully chose the name Brave with Inflexions because this is where we confront ourselves very bravely as leaders. Thank you, and I hope you all got nuggets that you can take back and help you to navigate through the rest of your career as a leader. Thank you.